I will post a link to my slides. However, I only have like 2 slides. So it's mostly going to be just walking through Google Classroom. I'll post it in just a couple minutes. That way we can get started. If you guys haven't already, please open up to Google Classroom, and we're going to walk through creating classrooms for next year. Is there anyone in here that has not used Google Classroom before? If
I haven't.
Oh, okay, so some of you haven't. Okay, good. So we have some new people. So if you're brand new, you're going to want to go to classroom.google.com, and you want to sign in with your school email, because currently that's likely what you're going to be using for school. So you want to make sure that everything's tied to your account. So you're going to go there first. You're going to open that up, and I'm going to walk us through some steps in just a minute here. But the purpose of this workshop is to make sure that Google Classroom is going to work best for our students in the distance learning setting. Last semester, we all went distance learning in March, and it worked really well for some classes, and some it didn't work so well because we didn't figure out how to shift entirely to like a distance format. We've always used Google Classroom in the classroom, and it sometimes needs to look something different when we're away from that in-person setting. So I like to call the stream a crime scene sometimes when I look back at my old Google Classrooms. When I first started just using it in the classroom, it kind of looked like a crime scene because everything got pushed out together. You had announcements, you had assignments, and everything just flooding kids' screens, and there was no real organization to it. They weren't able to figure out what to do first, what to do second. And so there are some ways in which we can kind of tailor our Google Classrooms to make sure that this doesn't happen. I've got a picture here of what some of my old classrooms looked like. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. So assignments were listed with various due dates out of order sometimes, and that was confusing for students. So I'd post something and then I'd edit it, and things would get moved around. Also, important messages were buried under massive amounts of assignment posts, and that was another issue. So we're going to talk about how to kind of combat that today. I wanted to share with you guys some feedback that we got from students at SVHS this year. I work at Scotts Valley High School, by the way. My name is Megan Laws. I teach English and yearbook. In our distance learning survey, we had kids overwhelmingly say that they really appreciated it when teachers had work organized under each unit or under each week, so that they could find their assignments easily, and if they missed something, they could go back to it later. And these comments came up over and over again in different ways. Something to note too was that posting things once a week or once a day was most effective for students. So we're going to kind of work through all of that today. So I'm going to get into my Google Classroom here, and I'm going to walk you guys through the steps. For those of you who have never used it before, we're going to make our first classroom. And those of you who have, we're going to create a classroom for this year. So you can choose one of the classes that you know that you're going to teach this year, and you're going to create that class. So I'm assuming all of you have logged into Google Classroom now. Has anyone had any trouble logging in? Anyone need help with that? If you ever need help, you can push your mouse down to the bottom of the screen and hit the hand button. I see I have a comment here. I'm not getting notifications for the chat, so I apologize if my response is delayed here. Yeah, I will. I see a question that says, will you show examples for small K through 12 grade students? And yeah, I'm going to talk about ways in which we can tailor this to all grades. This format's going to work for K through 12. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to click on the plus sign up at the top here. And once you click that button, we're going to click create a class. The join class is if you were going to actually take a class, or if your students were taking your class, they would hit join class. You'll click create class there, and then you're going to put in your class name. And I'm just making one for the purpose of this workshop because I'm a planner and I've already made my Google Classroom for my classes. In this section portion here, usually when I'm on campus, I like to put what class period my class is, because I teach secondary classes. However, what I found for distance learning is that what's best to go here is if you're using Zoom, to put the Zoom link here. And this is going to help your students have access to their Zoom link, or if you're going to do a different video platform, that link should go right here. If you're going to use Google Meet, don't put the Google Meet link here because I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Google is integrated, so they have something special for that. But if you're using Zoom, you can put a placeholder here right now since you don't have a Zoom link. Obviously, you can't create one on the fly. Well, I mean, you could, but then you'd have to take time away from this workshop. Samantha, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so I'm gonna, we've been mandated to use Google Classroom at our district, but I'm not gonna use Google Classroom because I used it in the spring. I'm a first grade teacher. It didn't work very well because the kids couldn't submit work and the parents were overwhelmed. So we're gonna use Seesaw. So my goal for today is to see how I'm gonna be using Google Classroom to use Seesaw to shoot my parents directly to Seesaw. Like I want them to have less things to think about because they're first grade parents. They don't have any experience with technology.
Yeah, so you could totally put that link there too.
Would I put Seesaw in that section part, or is that just
you could put whatever your landing spot is right there, so it's always at the top. And then if you wanted to use Google Classroom later on to like push out announcements, because it'll go to students' email feeds or parents' email.
Yeah, I mean, I might use it more, but I was just wondering if that was the spot where I would put the Seesaw part. Like, yeah,
whatever you want students to have access to all the time should go there, because it'll show up in the banner and then they won't ever lose it. My students lost the Zoom link all the time last semester, so this is a fix that I found should work for everybody.
Perfect.
See some chats here. Gotta get to them. This screen's a little. Okay, so in Pajaro District, the classes are created for you. Awesome. So those of you who have them already created, we're gonna get there in a second. I'll show you how to edit this so you can add your Zoom link if you want later on. You don't necessarily need the subject of the room because that stuff doesn't even show up in Google Classroom for the students unless they really search for it anyways. So the first two sections is all you really need, and then you'll hit create. And it takes a minute because they're doing all the back end stuff, creating your big classroom. So just let it do its thing. And there you have your Google Classroom. So as you can see up at the top, it'll have the title of your class, and then it'll have a Zoom link that students can copy and paste if they want into Google Classroom. If you guys are using Google Meet, I know some teachers used Google Meet last year. You can actually generate a Meet link here that is personalized to your class. I don't use Meet because I need a little bit more for the high school level in terms of features for interaction. But this could work well if this is what you want to do. All you do is just click Generate Meet Link, and it's going to generate the link, and you can make it visible to students once you generate it, and it'll be there, and students can click that link to go directly there. So it does save one step because they can actually click it as opposed to copy and paste. But again, I like Zoom. It's better for now. So the first thing we're going to look at in the classroom itself is the stream. The stream is the first thing that students see when they enter your Google Classroom. And this is where you want to put important announcements. It's super important that you really only use the stream for announcements during distance learning, because students are going to be needing to find the important information that you're sending out, like I don't know what you would put here, but like maybe your principal wants you to post a message for them. This is where they might find that information. And if you have your assignments being posted here, then they're going to get hidden by the announcements or vice versa. So my recommendation is you use the stream just for announcements, and it's really simple to do so. You just hit that button that says share with your class, and you can type something, you can add anything you want. Last year, I recorded myself on Zoom and gave my students an intro to the week with announcements, and I was able to add that just via add a file, so you could do it that way. And then you just hit post, and it'll post to all your students in your stream. To ensure that your assignments are not posting to the stream, we need to set that setting in Google Classroom. So we're going to go up to the wheel up here, up at the very top of the screen. And we're going to click that button, and this is the class settings. So this is where you'll see the class details. If you're in Pajaro District and you do want to add that Zoom link, this is where you would do that. You can just go to settings and you can change that information. And then in the general section, it has your class code, which there's another place to find that, but that would be where you would get the information to share with your students so that they could join the class. And then on the stream, here are some important settings that you want to make sure that you're paying attention to. So one is the stream where students can post and comment. This is a personal preference. If you want students to be able to post comments, to ask questions, or to interact with one another, you can keep it this way. I personally am going to have my students communicate with me via email only, just because I like to have my Google Classroom notifications turned off because I get inundated with messages, but it's a personal preference for teachers. Also, something that you need to consider is whether or not your students are mature enough to use this feature in an appropriate manner. I like to turn it off. So I just, personally, I would put teachers can post or comment. Sometimes if I have my seniors and I want them to be commenting on something, I might change that for a couple days so that they can comment to something, but I'm not going to let them post on their own. Classwork on the stream. This is what we want to turn off for distance learning. We're going to say hide notifications for classwork on the stream. And the classwork, this is what we're going to talk about in a minute, is where all the assignments will go. And we're going to hide notifications so the classwork doesn't show up in two places. That's one of the flaws with Google Classroom, is that it does show up in two places and students do get confused. That was the number one thing that students got confused with last year, at least at our site, was that the information was coming in multiple places. So we want to make sure that students have a structure that they can adhere to. Guardian summaries. If you have students adding their parents to Google Classroom, they can invite their parent, or if you're teaching elementary school, you can invite the parents yourselves so that parents can see their work. They won't necessarily see the whole Google Classroom, but they'll be able to see the summary of what their child is assigned and what's due in the week. I think that's a really helpful tool, and it's going to help save us a lot of time when we're communicating with parents through this distance learning. If we allow the Guardian summaries to stay on, they can get weekly notifications that shows them what their students are working on. And they have an example here I can show you guys. So, so this is an email summary. So this is what they would get in their inbox if a student or you invited the parent to Google Classroom. This is what they would see weekly for the students, so they can see all that's due in all of their classes, which is pretty cool. If you turn off comments on the stream, can students still ask questions about assignments in classwork? Yes, that's a separate setting. So we're going to get to that. Yeah, so for the general, I believe if you turn off the stream, it should be fine. I haven't had any issues with that in the past. And then the question that I got about the Guardian summaries, it says that just for their child? Yes, it's just for their child. They're not going to see what other students are missing or what they other students have been assigned, because you can actually assign one student something that's different from another, and I'll show you guys how to do that as well. So looking at these settings, we also have grading. To get to class settings, up at the very top of the screen, there's a little wheel up top. And if you click on that, you get right to class settings. And I'm gonna start going a little bit faster, you guys. And if you have questions, I'm gonna check back in a few minutes, but I wanna make sure that we get to all the important pieces, and there's a lot to cover. So just keep those comments coming and I will come back to them, I promise. But I just wanna keep rolling so we make sure we get this all set up. If you are planning to use Google Classroom as your grading system, for the most part, or if you want students just to have a one-stop shop to find out what their grade is, you can actually use Google Classroom as a grading system. You can calculate grade categories, so you can weight grades if you want. You can do overall grade calculations with total points as well. So you would just set that to your preference. This year I'm going to use total points, so that's what I would do in there. And then if you want, you can show the overall grade to students so they can constantly check their grade if they want to. At the high school level, that might be great, but for elementary school kids, they might not necessarily want that. So again, that's going to be a personal preference for you. So these options are there for you, again, in that little wheel up at the top, and you'll set them to your preference. But do make sure that you hide notifications for classwork on the stream. That is the most important piece there to help our students with the distance learning. Once you've finished, you're going to hit save. And you're going to come back to the stream here. Right here up at the top, when you get to Google Classroom, this is the class code that you can share out. You can display it nice and big. So like in your first Zoom meeting with your students, if they will get a Zoom link first before they get your Google Classroom link, you can set up Google Classroom with them on Zoom the very first day. You can share this screen with them, and then they can go to the little plus sign that you use to create your classroom and click the join class, and then they would just copy and paste or type in the code that's here on the screen for them. So this would be a nice, easy way to get them set up with Google Classroom. This is what I'm going to do on the very first day of school to get them set for the year. Next, we're going to take a look at classwork and how to organize that. The classwork, again, is where you're going to be posting all of your assignments. To create an assignment, you just click that little plus sign there, and you have a myriad of options here. So you have an assignment, a quiz assignment, so it'll generate a Google Forms for you. You can ask a question, which is kind of cool. You can pose a discussion question, and students can write an initial response, and then they can respond to one another. And I often use this to ask students a question of the day. I do like a journal question, and this could work for all grade levels. You could ask students simple questions to get them engaged. I often do silly ones like, is cereal soup, or is hot dog a sandwich? Just to kind of get kids talking while we start our day. You can also ask deeper questions here as well, and they can respond to one another. In English class, it really tricks kids into sparking debates. I love it. But it's a fun tool. And then you also have materials. So if you want students to read something, but they don't necessarily have to complete an assignment, you can post that there. So if you have a PDF, you could post the PDF in materials, or you could post a video for them to watch. If there's nothing that needs to be added on to that assignment, this is where you would post the material. I also use materials to post the reading assignment for the week. Since my students are going to be reading physical copies, I don't know if you guys are going to be reading physical copies or if you're going to be using a type of online resource. But if you are going to be assigning something that they've picked up from the school and they have at home, you can assign it here just by hitting the materials, and then you would type like read pages 4 through 7 by Friday. or whatever you want, and then you can hit post. If you are teaching multiple classes, if you have multiple sections, this would most likely be for secondary classes, you can select multiple classes. If you are assigning the same work to multiple classes, you could do that just by selecting. It's awesome when you are pushing out assignments on the day that you want them to go out to students, and you can select them all at the same time. Super cool. If you are a planner like me and you like to schedule things ahead of time, you can schedule assignments as well by hitting schedule. The only bummer with that is you cannot schedule assignments for multiple classes. So I love this feature where you can push out to multiple classes. Unfortunately, when I select multiple classes, I cannot schedule for multiple classes. So the planner in me has a really hard time with this. However, if we're willing to adjust and push things out on the day that you want it to be pushed out, you can save a lot of time by adding multiple classes and hitting post. And this setup is the same for any type of assignment material. I'm going to take a look at the chat questions because I see we have a bunch of them. Remove a post after you hit post. Yes, you can delete. You can't resave as a draft. And you do have to delete from each class. That's correct. Yeah, and you can save as a draft in multiple classes. Okay, all right, we got that taken care of. Thank you, Jason, for moderating for me. And then the place to put a link to Seesaw would be where we put the link for Zoom at the very top. So when you go to the stream up here in class settings, you would put it in the section portion for class details. So in Classwork, you see I've created this assignment. It's a draft. I haven't posted it yet. Something that we want to do for our students is to create some topics. We can create topics by week, by day, or by unit, and it really depends on how you're structuring your classes. So for elementary school, sometimes it might make sense to structure by subject. If you're going to be pushing out math assignments on a certain day, you could put math and add that as a topic. And then you can organize your topics by your assignments by just dragging your assignments into your topic. And you can also assign the topic when you are creating your assignment as well. You can also create a topic as you're creating an assignment. So I could also make this assignment a different topic, and you can change them as many times as you want. What I'm going to be doing for my classes is to organize by week. The topic organizer is under Create. That's the main place where you can find topics. You can also find it when you go to create an assignment. It is over here. So it's in a couple different places. Google actually makes this really accessible and easy for you to handle. When we're creating a new title, if you're in a new week, you can set the new week here. For all of my classes, I'm going to be assigning by week. So for the week of, we don't start school until the 24th. So this would be the first week of school for me, and this is what I would push out to my students. Once I hit assign, it's going to generate that assignment under the week. And when I go to create another assignment, I can add it to that same one. And you can assign a due date. So if it's going to be due on Friday, you can put that there and hit assign. And it's going to show up there. We do want to put due dates for our students because that's going to be important for them to kind of keep in mind what they need to have completed when. You can also organize the assignments in order in which you want students to complete them. So if you want the first assignment to be Monday, you can create it on Monday and maybe have it due Wednesday. And then the second assignment could be Wednesday due Friday. Oops, I deleted it. And if you ever forget to assign a topic or a due date, you can easily fix that by hitting the 3 dots and clicking the edit button here. But by organizing things in the order in which you want students to address them, this is going to help them with order of operations. They're always going to go to what is right in front of their faces. So we want to make sure that it's as easy as possible for them to see this. So when I'm organizing my classes, I'm going to be organizing again by week, and then I'm also going to be organizing by day. And I'm going to make sure that when I push out assignments, what I want for them to do on the day that they're looking at Google Classroom is up at the top. So if it's Wednesday and they've already done Monday's work, I'm going to move Wednesday up to the top for them. I want them to see what is due for them or what is assigned for them on that day that they're looking at Google Classroom right in front of their face. If it's not right in front of their face, they're going to say they can't find it, even if it is right there. You're always going to get 1 or 2 who just can't find it. We all know those students. So we want to make sure that it's nice and easy for them to find. And by organizing it by day, whether you're doing your organization by your units, your math, your science, English, and all of that if you're elementary, or if you're a secondary teacher and you're going to organize by week, you want to make sure that you are organizing by day under your units. And then maybe create a separate topic for old assignments. So like past math assignments. If you create that for your students, then they know where to find old assignments to go back to if they're going to finish up some late work, or if they want to go back and look at some old material. But if we keep everything kind of fresh up at the top, it's going to make it a lot easier for students to know what they need to be working on, as opposed to what's old and what they don't need anymore. Ooh, Jason made a good point. He said also by adding a due date, it adds to their Google Calendar, and that's something that's really cool. The elementary school students might not necessarily be using Google Calendar, but our secondary students, especially the high schoolers, we're going to be teaching them to use Google Calendar because that's a nice life skill, and they can add that Google Calendar for their do. And I'll show you guys how to find the Google Calendar in just a minute. Kat says, do you manually move it each day, or is there a setting to organize them by newest to last? There is not a setting, so you will need to move it, but it's so simple. You just click on it and drag it. So it's not difficult at all. It takes a second. Can we schedule assignments, or can we schedule when assignments go out? Yes, you can. And that's something that I was showing you guys earlier, and I think I went a little too fast. So if I were to schedule something, You would create your title, add your due date, and then points if you want it, and then assign your topic. And once you assign all your topics and make sure everything is set, then you click this little inverted triangle up here, and there's the schedule button. And once you click schedule, it's going to give you an option for when you want the assignment to actually appear for students. So that's pretty cool. I use this feature all the time. I use way more time than I should because I like to schedule things on Friday that go out on Monday. So I'm always afraid I'm gonna wake up late and not have time to push everything out. So this schedule feature is really great because you can set things for your first day of school or whenever. You just have to make sure your due date is prior or is after the schedule date. That'll be the only issue you have there. You just click schedule and it's all ready to go. How does work get populated in the Google Drive folder? It will be the work gets populated in the Google Drive folder based on assignment. So every time you create a new assignment, there is a new folder that is generated in Classroom under your class folder. So you can find student work in the Google Drive folder. However, I have found that I don't need that Google Drive folder at all. The only time I have ever used the Google Drive folder for Google Classroom is to pull up multiple documents to submit to my administration for cheating matters. That's the only time that you really ever need the Drive, because you can find student work in here, and I'm going to show you guys how to access that too. We only have a couple more minutes, so I want to go a little faster. Last thing, do you end up archiving and deleting topics? Yes. So like I was saying before, you probably want to edit topics or add new ones as the year goes on to move things away. I would say, once a quarter or whenever you feel is a good enough amount of time to give students the time to make up their work, then I would maybe archive assignments into past assignments or something. Edit one topic to say past assignments, and then move all of those old weeks into the past assignments so students can find that old work still there. You don't necessarily want to delete it forever, because then you delete all of their work too. I mean, they might still have it in their Drive if they're not like deleting their assignments as they go, but you won't have access to them anymore, and you never know when you're going to need them. I know at the high school level, we've found so many reasons why we need to look at past work. So you definitely want to keep them, but you could put it under a topic that says past assignments. All right, so this is how we'd set up the classroom. I'm going to show you guys what an actual classroom looks like with students in them. I clicked on the wrong one. Let's see. So this is my seniors from last year, and this is the stream. So when I posted information, I was just posting assignments. For some reason, questions showed up in there, and I'm hoping that Google Classroom fixes that. But in the Classwork section, I had everything last year organized by topic for my seniors. And this might actually be, so my honors class might be better because I'm showing you, I want to show you what I'm teaching you. So this was the class that I taught last year that I've organized how I'm showing you what we want to do. So every week I have the weekly topic, and then I had all the assignments for students Monday through Friday. Some of these are a little out of order because I played around with them in a previous workshop. But I often will, like I said, move assignments around for students so that the most recent assignment is up at the top. And I always have an assignment at the end of the week for late work. if a student is completing assignments from the week prior, they can put that assignment in one place. So that's where I know to get it. That way I'm not getting students sending me emails saying, I turned in something way later and I don't know that they've turned it in because I turned off my Google notifications. So this is a nice way to make sure students still have an option to turn in late work, but they have to take the agency and initiative to submit their work to a separate assignment. So it means they have to find the document and move it to the late work section. To find student work, you can click on an assignment, and then it'll tell you that 24 or however many students you have turned it in, and those that are assigned, that means they haven't turned in their work yet. When you click on the turned in option, you can see all of your students' work here. You get a little preview too. And this is pretty cool because you can actually see if students have started taping something or if they've got a blank sheet. And you can just click on the student's work and then you can start reading it. So that's how I find student work. I like to stay in Google Classroom because in Google Classroom, I can grade student work. I can give them a grade. I can add them private comments. So I could say, great job. And post it. I can grade the assignment. And then I can hit return. So all right there, I was able to give student feedback, add the grade, and return the work to the student all in one spot. So that's a nice feature that we've got there. The last thing I want to talk about, because we only have, I think, 5 more minutes, is the people here. This little people section that we have is where you can find your students and you can add your teachers. In my district, we have a policy where we have to add at least 1 teacher to our classroom. So in case one of us has to go out, the other teacher can come in and take over our class and monitor our class. So this is where you would add a teacher if you wanted to add a teacher. Also, if you teach a grade level course with other teachers, so at the elementary level, I know there are multiple 3rd grade teachers, multiple 1st grade teachers for the most part. You guys can add each other to your classrooms as teachers. And then when you are posting an assignment, you can post an assignment for all of your classes. So you can kind of share the load a little bit. Something I did for my classes this last year was I actually added my TAs as teachers to my accounts. And I did that because I had students completing journal assignments and small things that I just wanted to make sure they were completing, but I didn't have time to check because I was managing so much work on the computer. So I had my TAs checking to make sure that they were just at least completing their journal entries. And I trusted them enough to do this. It's a personal preference. I wouldn't have done this with all of my TAs, just the ones that I added as the teachers. So that's something that you can keep in mind too if you really want to add someone who is not a teacher but who's a student and you want them to be able to give feedback. Like if you have an older student who's giving writing feedback or math feedback to other students, you could add them as a teacher and then they can go in to student work and provide those private comments and give them some support that way too. You can also add teacher aides, which I did to my classes as well. So those are all some helpful pieces. You can also email students through this people portal. So this is a nice way to get the whole student list and email everybody at once. You can also email all guardians. So if you add a parent email list, if you invite all the guardians, which is going to take a little bit of time at the beginning of the year, you're going to save yourself a ton of time later because you are making sure that you have all their information, and then when you want to send them an update, it's right there, and you can just click that button, email all guardians, and it'll generate an email for you. All right, so Leslie says she missed the part about seeing assignments for all students. To click view all assignments, you just go to Classwork and you click on whatever assignment you want to check on, and then you click on the turned in option, and then you can see all student assignments, and all you have to do is just click on the document that you want to look at, and it pulls it up right away. And you can also toggle through multiple student assignments just by clicking the little button up at the top here. So you can look through all student work all in one window. To archive an old class, if you've used Google Classroom before, you would go back to the three bars and there's a little home button for classes. And once you get to your classes, you'll click the three dots here and you would hit archive. You have to type in all students and parents' names yourself in an email function. For parents, yes. For students, no. For parents, since I teach older students, I have my students add their parents to the classes. So they can do that once they have added the class. I have to get to a class that actually has students in it to show you. Under people, we have students, and they see this as well when they go to people. They're going to see the students in the class, so they can actually email their classmates from here as well. But they have that little button that says invite guardians, so they can click invite guardians and then type in their own parents' email if they are capable of doing that. The younger students might not necessarily be able to do that, so that would be something that you would have to do. But it's worth it. If you take the time at the beginning of the year, then you have that capability the whole year. Yeah, and Jason says if a student is already attached to a parent from the previous year, they will automatically be connected. So they only need to do that once. So if all of our kindergartners get this done, then they're going to be set for the rest of their school career as long as they stay in the same district. By email students, does it also email guardians, or is it separate? So yes, it is separate. Parents don't like to be inundated with emails, and Google knows that. So parents only get daily or weekly digests, and they get to choose that option themselves. And then they'll get an additional email from you if you say email all guardians. So they can't see student assignments, so they don't know what the instructions are or any of that, but they do see a breakdown of what students should be completing. So they can see the titles and the little brief descriptions. Does every assignment end up on the classroom calendar? Only if you add a due date. And that was the last thing I was going to show you guys is the calendar. So over on the three dots, you can find this on any screen in Google Classroom. So no matter where you are at, you can hit these three lines here and then click on the calendar, and students will see their work that's due. As a teacher, you can see the work that you've assigned. So if I go back, try to go back to some dates here, it'll show you everything that you have assigned. Students will see the assignments that are assigned to them in their Google Classroom, and you'll see what you've assigned. And I believe if you click on it, you can actually get to all of your student answers and work there as well. So there are lots of different places where you can find student work, and super helpful. Let's see here, chat question. And it'll also show up on your regular Google Calendar. Since Google has everything tied together with your email address, if you go to your Google Calendar, on your calendar, like in your email, those three, for the Rubik's Cube, I like to call it a little square with dots up at the top. You can go to your calendar that way too, and you can find everything that you assigned. You can also turn off those notifications if you want in the Google settings. I do that because I get inundated if I don't. Can students get to the assignments when they click on the calendar? I believe so. If I can do it, they can. So they could use the calendar as their tool. However, it's going to show up the day it's due, not the day that it's assigned, I believe. So it's not necessarily the best place for them to go. So when you are instructing your students to look for their assignments, you definitely want to say, check the stream for important announcements, check Classwork for all of the information about assignments. So if all of our students are trained to look in Classwork for their assignments, hopefully we won't have any questions there. Oh yeah, you can definitely, no, you have to upload. So Samantha is asking the theme backgrounds they have are kind of limited. That's something we didn't get into today, but what I did is I created a Bitmoji like you guys saw on my presentation, and then I added it by uploading a photo. Their themes are pretty limited. When you go to select a theme for your classroom, there aren't very many, and they're not super awesome. They actually used to be better. I don't know what happened, but they're not so great anymore. And by adding something that's a little bit more personalized, you can add more information to your Google Classroom. I'm giving students information that I want them to know all the time and not lose. Little reminders, but it's all kind of personal preference. And unfortunately, it's a little dark because Google has this feature to make it a little bit more accessible to students. And hopefully they'll find a way to get around it eventually. Leslie says, I'm using Seesaw for students to submit work. Do you recommend creating an announcement or activity to let students know to complete the assignment? I would say just in your announcements, you don't want them to think that they have a separate assignment to turn in, because on Classwork, it's going to tell them that they have something due. So, I mean, if you're using Seesaw, I would just use your classroom solely for announcements and have them always check Seesaw for their announcements and all that. Andrea, you said, how, do I access them by going to Sheets?
Sorry, that was an earlier thread with Jason. Okay. It has to do with, I'm just wondering how to get a list of my grades after I grade them all in one place, because I will have to do some cut and paste to put into my Canvas gradebook. Yeah, I'm using a TA, you see, and so I wanted to use Classroom separate from my Canvas so that my TA doesn't have access to Canvas.
Gotcha. Yeah, and actually you can use the grades here. I'm in one of my colleagues' classes, but for the purpose of showing you guys assignments. If you are good about adding in points, which in our English department, we are not, we're terrible. We tell the students how much it's worth, and then we just put it in our learning management system. But if you are diligent about adding grades, all student work will show up here in the classroom grades. And then you can I think if you hit this, no, that's not it. My screen is not allowing me to see the whole. so I'm not able to, I think if you hit the,
I think it's under Classwork. Click on Classwork tab.
Yeah, if you do click on Classwork, you can, I know you can get to student work that way. And then you can, once you grade student work, you can download all grades with a CSV, so you can grade them individually. But I believe that in grades, there was an option last month when I was doing another workshop. It was like right at the top, but I don't see it anymore. So Google Classroom is constantly changing, unfortunately.
There it
but
is.
this is a
It's
way
on the gear.
that has not, it hasn't gone away. Yeah, so up at the top in the individual assignments, you can definitely download all grades or go to Google Sheets and download from there. I am guessing that they're probably going to generate something for grades to do the same. I thought that there was one, but I can't find it currently. And I believe, Jason, do you remember what time we're done?
I think it was 125, so I think it was
125. All right,
12:35.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, email me. I'm typing my email in right now into the chat. And I'm happy to help you guys. So thank you so much for joining in, and I am going to be doing this workshop again. So if you feel like you didn't get enough, you can do it again. But I do recommend taking the opportunity to check out some of the other workshops too. Yeah, the Meet link at the top only applies to people using Google Meet. So I would.
And will parents, and if we're not using Google Meet, we're using Zoom, we as teachers should just pretend that's not there, and the parents can't see that when they log on, right?
Yeah, the parents can't see it. And yeah, so I would just in the section portion of when you're setting up your class, I would just put your Zoom link instead.
Okay, thanks. I'm trying to reduce confusion. Can you tell? I'm like, let's keep it.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. I totally get it. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.